Thank you, Cheryl. We are never alone. So appropriate for introducing our monthly near-death experiencer talker, presenter. You've heard me talk about near-death experiences that come from the earliest oral and written traditions, way back in the Hindu Vedas, before written word. There were oral stories of near-death experiences. And then in every civilization, the Chaldean and the Sumerian and all these civilizations all have near-death experiences in them. And so it's wonderful that we finally got organized in this country and the world to have an organization that we can come together and combine our thinking and our writing. And so this started shortly after Raymond Moody's book Life After Life in 1975. That sort of coined, that did in fact coin the term near-death experience in 75. So we're only about 40 years of modern near-death experience studies. And this International Association of Near-Death Studies that Susan runs really, is really doing a wonderful job in these 40 years. We have an academic journal where we can write very sophisticated academic papers and share that level of knowledge on near-death experiences. And we have conferences and international conferences and chapters all over the country now, in the world, in fact, in many places in the world. And Susan helped organize chapters, especially in Arizona, in Phoenix and Mesa. And think, can you find 50 near-death experiencers in Mesa, Arizona? Susan did. And to think, we have a wonderful chapter here, but Santa Barbara, California, 150 to 180 people come every month to their meeting. So the near-death experience is really growing, and Susan is now a really wonderful part. By the way, if you ever want a really good employee who's hardworking and is there ready to go every day and gets things done, and that's Susan. When I call the IANDS office in Durham, Susan or Marianne will just answer the phone and say, yes, we can do that. And things get done, and it's so refreshing. It's so wonderful. And Susan's going to talk not so much about near-death experiences today, but her path. She was born in Ohio, has her Bachelor of Science degree. And Susan, though, has never had the near-death experience, although she lives in this world. So she calls herself an experiencer of life. Susan Amsden.
Well, Neil's a lot taller than I am. And, if you've ever been in a darkened room with a mosquito, you know that it doesn't matter. You can be as small as you are, and you can still have a huge effect on people. But yeah, I wanted to tell you, my mother died when I was a child, and that was the first time I ever had an experience with death, and it was such a shock. And I asked the adults, well, what does it mean when you die? And I could tell they were fumbling. They didn't know how to answer that. But they told me, well, it's when you go to sleep or you quit breathing. And I thought, oh my God. Then I was afraid to go to sleep at night because I thought, what if I stop breathing? Well, anyways, I eventually found the near-death experiences, IANDS, and it's been wonderful for me. And I've also learned from them. I'd ask the near-death experiencers, well, how do you hear that divine wisdom? I want to hear that divine wisdom you hear. And it was unanimous. The answer was meditation. And I'm sure you, being in this organization with Paul, knowing Paul Solomon, would be very familiar with that. Even the Edgar Cayce organization there, same thing. So meditation is very important. And that's actually how I met my teacher. So I started meditating, and I was also told to journal. So I would journal the images that I would get. And dreams, it was pay attention to dreams, that there are signs and synchronicities everywhere in life. So I started paying attention, writing my dreams down, paying attention to the meditation images, and I kept wondering, wow, why does this unique man keep showing up in my dreams? And it'd be sort of a, nice casual setting. We'd be talking on sofas with several other people. And I later met him. His name is Michael Tamura. He lives in Mount Shasta, California. And he said, it's no accident that you've met me because I'm teaching you on the astral. So he said, we have astral classes every night around 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. Of course, time doesn't really exist in that realm. But that's who my teacher is, and he is now a 5-time near-death experiencer. He was a 3-time near-death experiencer. So I've really learned to pay attention to people who have had a near-death experience because they crossed over and they felt that unconditional love. And I want to try to learn to emulate that myself. I want to try to bring heaven here on earth as best I can. And I wanted to ask each of you, because we've all had experiences in life that when we've been at a fork in the road, what made you take this fork? Why didn't you take that fork? I mean, were you getting guidance, or were you getting just a feeling in your gut that you needed to go this way? And I think that's very important to know. And I started asking near-death experiencers as I would have them speak, well, what percentage of your experience haven't you shared? And I was surprised. Some of them, it was 50%. And so I started asking them, well, what are your reasons? Because I want to learn how I can help near-death experiencers open up more. How can we help them feel comfortable in sharing their experience because they have so much wisdom to share? And some of the reasons were experience is too personal. Another reason was they couldn't find the words to describe it. A third one was they were afraid if they put their experience into words, it would diminish it. And a fourth one was they didn't feel that society was ready to hear some of the messages that they had. Some of them had future visions and that. Well, I'm so grateful for people like Paul Solomon because he allowed himself to share his experiences. That's why we're all sitting here today. If he would have kept quiet and not shared that, we wouldn't have had this church. So I'd like to ask all of you, what percent of your experiences have you shared? So please go out and share some personal spiritual experiences with somebody and see how that goes, because the more we can normalize talking about these kind of experiences, the more we can help society raise their consciousness, and it's going to feel okay to talk about various things. Well, and as Neil talked about the organization, we have groups all around the country, and that's the whole point of our support groups, is to help each other feel comfortable in a safe, neutral environment. And if you're with an experiencer, please be as non-judgmental as you can. Please listen to them in that manner, because it's very helpful. And I wanted to give you an example of what we experienced in Tucson. There was a woman there, and she started coming to our sharing group meetings. She didn't talk for like 6 months. And then eventually, little bits started coming out about her experience. She was, I'll call it trampled by horses. But anyways, and then after that, she attended one of our conferences that we had in Scottsdale, Arizona. And the first night she was there, she couldn't handle all the energy. It was too much for her. And she went back to her room. She apologized to me, and but that was fine. She needed time to adjust. Well, then the next morning she had adjusted, and she had a good time for the rest of the conference. Later on, She's speaking at Canyon Ranch. It's an expensive ranch in Tucson. I don't know if anybody's heard about it, but that's where Oprah Winfrey speaks at and goes there. And so here she is. She's sharing her experience now with all of the people who are coming to Canyon Ranch. Once a week, she'd share her near-death experience. Then she started doing combined talks with Dr. Gary Schwartz down there at University of Arizona. And I don't know how many of you have heard of him, but he's actually trying to create what he calls the soul phone. It's where you can get information from people from the other side, or if you have a deceased loved one that you've been wanting to talk to. He's trying to create that right now. He's doing it on his computer, and he's asking the spirits to come to him during the night and affect his computer, and they're doing that. So who knows? With the way technology is, we're seeing amazing things happen all the time. And they're kind of dragging us with them sometimes. I can't hardly keep up with all the technology. I don't know about you, but so anyways, this person who told her experience eventually became familiar. Then she wrote her book. So now her book is called A Breath is Precious. And I just want to share one little bit about her recovery. So her head, she had a severe concussion. And she said her husband, well, she had amnesia quite bad, and her husband took her across the street to see a couple that they were familiar with, because she owned a dude ranch with her husband. So they go across the street, and the guy that answers the door says, "Do you remember me?" Well, this was kind of a setup a little bit. And she said, "No, I don't know who you are." And he said, "Well, let me get this CD." So he gets this CD, and he shows her the cover, and he says, "Now do you remember me?" She's like, "No, I don't know who you are." And he says, "Just a minute." So he sits down at the piano and has her sit next to him. And he starts playing, I forget what song now it was, she told me. And she starts singing along with the song. Because, the brain and music have such a unique interaction with each other. Well, it turned out it was Paul McCartney. And then she could remember who it was. And him and Linda used to live, well, they had a place across the street that they only visited there for Linda's daughter. So I just thought that was really neat. And that's in her book. And also, I wanted to share a few experiences that I've had. Miscarriage, panic attacks when I was young, heading for divorce. And I did what the experiencer said. I would meditate, and I said, "God, I'm still not hearing that divine wisdom." It's like, duh. They said, "Ask a question." Oh, is that what it's supposed to be? So for me, I'd been married 31 years to an atheist, and I had asked, should I divorce? I'd been agonizing over this for 2 years. My sons were saying, "Mom, you should divorce." And this voice, male voice, came in outside my head right here, just 5 words. It said, "Do you have a marriage?" And I was like, finally I hear this divine voice, and I start arguing with them. Well, yeah, I've been married for 31 years, and didn't argue back, didn't tell me what to do. And so then I realized, I have to figure out that answer for myself. Well, let's see. What does marriage mean to me? Okay, communication, respect, trust. And I realized I didn't have that in huge quantities in this relationship now, and we were heading in different directions, which that was also a meditation image. I saw 2 police cars. Their lights were blaring, and they just zoomed right past each other. And it was like, so I had my message. But those are the amazing things that can happen during meditation. And I'm sure all of you, being associated with Paul Solomon's organization, could each be up here sharing your own amazing experience. So let's see, the other thing I wanted to mention was some past life fragments started coming in. I started getting little visions. And then as I've taken from my teacher and we practice doing readings on people, I'll get a little video of their past life. So it's been really fun to explore. And one of his experiences, he said that he started seeing these negative pictures of what humanity was doing to humanity. But as he sat in neutrality, these pictures would come by him, and he realized, they were just two-dimensional pictures. So he said, we're all living in a set of pictures, which is really curious, because a lot of the yogis and gurus will say that this is an illusion that we're living in, but we're choosing to have this experience right now. So I also wanted to let you know that there's a man over in Italy, and he is able to bring up images of deceased children on like a video, and he's able to have the parents of that deceased child to communicate with them. So I'm so excited for the future, because these are awesome technological changes, and especially groups like yours who help promote this type of exploration. It's wonderful. So thank you for Paul Solomon and the wonderful ripple effect that has had such a tremendous impact on people who've heard his words. And please don't wait 40 years like some of the people who have told me their experience. They've waited 40 years because they were afraid to talk about it. Thank you.